Have you noticed that every summer, the grocery bill seems to be higher than you remember? Not because you are buying more, but because summer is when demand rises, children are out of school, more meals happen at home, and a series of pressures from weather, transportation, and production begin to appear at the same time. What is interesting is that smart shoppers usually do not wait until prices rise to take action. They buy a little ahead of time the things they know they will definitely use. And that is why today we are going to talk about 10 food items to buy before summer arrives. Not to panic, not to fill the house with food, but to help you save more, stay more prepared, and avoid paying more for the very items you still buy every week. And the first item on the list may be sitting in your refrigerator right now. 10. Eggs. Americans consume an average of more than 280 eggs per year. That means a family of 4 could use more than 1,000 eggs over 12 months. Not beef, not salmon, not expensive foods, but eggs. One of the most common foods in the country. But that is not the biggest problem yet. What is more worth noticing is that many people still see eggs as an item that is always available, always stable, and almost impossible to miss on supermarket shelves. We are used to walking into the store, grabbing a carton of eggs, and continuing to shop without thinking twice. But the last few years have shown a completely different reality. Just one shock in the system, and egg prices can rise sharply in only a few months and become a topic discussed across America. That happens because eggs are not as simple as they look. Behind a carton of eggs is an entire system dependent on animal feed, fuel, cold transportation, labor, and the health of millions of laying hens. If just one link runs into trouble, the entire supply chain starts to come under pressure. And what makes this story difficult to reverse is that no one can create millions of extra eggs in just a few weeks. If flocks reduce production or supply is disrupted, the market needs months to recover. Summer makes that pressure even greater. When temperatures rise, farms have to spend more on cooling systems. Long heat waves can affect the productivity of the flock. Operating costs rise. Meanwhile, demand remains strong. Children are out of school and spend more time at home. More families eat breakfast at home. Simple lunches appear more often, and many people start looking for affordable protein sources instead of expensive meats. Look at everyday life. Very few foods are as flexible as eggs. A boiled egg for breakfast. A plate of scrambled eggs for lunch. An egg sandwich. A salad with a few slices of boiled egg added. In just a few minutes, you have a complete meal at a much lower cost than many other protein sources. That is why every time egg prices rise, consumers feel it immediately. Not because eggs are too expensive, but because they appear so often in daily life. This is especially important for people over 50. After a certain age, maintaining enough protein becomes more important than ever. But not everyone wants to cook complicated meals on hot summer days. Eggs solve exactly that problem. Fast, simple, easy to prepare, and suitable for almost every kitchen. The solution is not to fill your refrigerator with dozens of trays of eggs. But if you see prices staying stable and supply looking plentiful before summer truly begins, this is a good time to take advantage of that. Because what you are buying is not just a carton of eggs. You are buying one of the most flexible protein sources in the supermarket. A carton of eggs is not just breakfast. It is the way a family turns 10 minutes in the kitchen into a protein-rich meal when everything else starts becoming more expensive. And if eggs help create simple but nutritious meals, the next item is what makes those meals much more memorable. 9. Spices and BBQ sauce. About 80% of the world's black pepper comes from only a few major producing countries, with Vietnam being one of the most important sources. It may sound very far from your kitchen, But the reality is much closer than many people think. Because when one spice depends on a small number of producing regions, all it takes is extreme weather, higher transportation costs, or export disruptions, and the final impact will show up right on local supermarket shelves. But that is not the biggest problem yet. What is more worth noticing is that many people underestimate the role of flavor. People can eat enough calories, people can have enough protein, but still not feel like eating. And that is when spices become far more important than their price tag. A jar of black pepper, a bottle of BBQ sauce, a little garlic powder, a little onion powder, a bit of Italian seasoning. They may not look like much, but it is those small things that turn simple ingredients into a meal the whole family actually wants to eat. Think about summer. This is grilling season, family gathering season, outdoor eating season. The season when grills are used more than at any other time of the year. And it is also the season when demand for BBQ sauce, marinades, hot sauce, and spices rises sharply. What is interesting is that when people think about rising food prices, they usually look at beef, chicken, or eggs. Very few people notice that the small spice jars on the shelf are also quietly becoming more expensive little by little. The bottleneck is in the system behind them. Black pepper depends heavily on Vietnam and India. Cinnamon depends on Sri Lanka and Indonesia. Many dried herbs, spice seeds, and other flavoring ingredients come from regions that are often affected by drought, flooding, or climate volatility. After harvest, they still have to go through drying, processing, packaging, ocean shipping, warehousing, and distribution to retail stores. A small spice jar is not just a few grams of ingredients. It is the result of an entire global supply chain stretching thousands of miles. And what makes the problem difficult to reverse is that spice crops cannot expand production in just a few months. One failed season can take years to fully recover from. Meanwhile, companies face increasingly high packaging, labor, and transportation costs. When profit margins are squeezed, they usually do not double prices overnight. They do something harder to notice. Smaller bottles, fewer promotions, a few extra cents added to the price. That is exactly the kind of price increase many families do not notice until they have to replace the whole spice cabinet at once. But the real value of spices is not in the market. It is in your kitchen. A bowl of beans, a plate of pasta, a serving of rice with eggs, a piece of grilled meat. Just by changing the seasoning, the meal feels completely different. During times when the food budget is stretched, flavor is not a luxury. It is what helps people keep eating at home instead of spending money on meals outside. It is what keeps affordable meals from becoming boring after many weeks in a row. That is why, before summer begins, this is a very good time to look back at your spice cabinet. You do not need to buy expensive or fancy items. Just check the things your family actually uses. Black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, Italian seasoning, BBQ sauce, hot sauce, or familiar marinades. Because sometimes what keeps a family eating well is not more expensive food. It is the flavor that makes simple foods still worth looking forward to after a long day. And now I would really like to know your opinion. If you could keep only 3 spices or sauces for this entire summer, which ones would you choose? Share them in the comments below. I always like seeing what secret weapons each family has in its kitchen. And if spices are what create flavor for a meal, the next item is something that appears in almost every dish you cook throughout the year. 8. Cooking oil. In the last few years, olive oil has become one of the clearest examples of how a familiar item can change in price very quickly. In many markets, olive oil prices once rose more than 50%, and in some places nearly doubled compared with what buyers used to consider normal. That number may sound like a story about a premium imported product, but its impact does not stop at one bottle of olive oil on the shelf. When one type of oil becomes more expensive, buyers start shifting to canola oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, or cheaper vegetable oil. And at that point, the pressure is no longer on one product. It spreads across the entire cooking oil category. You can see this sign during a very ordinary supermarket trip. A large bottle of oil that used to be seen as the most economical choice suddenly makes you look at the price tag a second time. Discounts appear less often. Some bottles look the same as before, but the volume is smaller. Some brands are still sitting in the same familiar spot, except the price no longer feels as comfortable as you remember. This is the quietest kind of change. It does not make shoppers panic immediately, but it is enough to make the monthly cooking bill heavier. The fragile part of the system is that cooking oil depends on many different harvests around the world. Olive oil is closely tied to the Mediterranean, especially Spain, Italy, and Greece. Sunflower oil, canola oil, soybean oil, and other vegetable oils are affected by weather, fertilizer, fuel, transportation, and oil crushing capacity in each producing region. When drought reduces olive output, consumers shift to other oils. When demand moves into other oils, the prices of those substitutes also come under pressure. This is not a straight line. It is like a small row of dominoes in the kitchen. When one bottle falls, the bottle next to it starts shaking too. And this is why that pressure does not disappear quickly. Olive trees cannot mature in a few months. A harvest that loses production cannot be replaced by a few truckloads. Oil processing plants, import contracts, packaging, transportation, and distribution all need time to adjust. Meanwhile, demand does not wait. Families still need to cook. Restaurants still need oil. Summer still draws people outdoors for grilled foods, salads, marinades, quick pan-seared meals, and simple dishes that need a little fat to become a real meal. For families trying to keep meals simple, affordable, and consistent after middle age, cooking oil is not just a supporting item in the pantry. It is what makes vegetables taste better, keeps eggs from sticking to the pan, gives pan-seared fish its aroma, prevents grilled meat from drying out, and makes very inexpensive foods easier to enjoy. Cooking oil is not the main item on the plate, but when it disappears from the kitchen, many main dishes begin disappearing with it. The smart approach here is not to buy too much, because oil can still go rancid if stored too long or kept improperly. But if you see the type of oil your family uses every week selling at a good price before summer arrives, buying an extra bottle or two makes perfect sense. Choose the one you actually cook with. Store it in a cool, dark place away from a hot stove. Rotate it through your normal meals. This is the kind of calm, planned-ahead purchase, not a rushed reaction. And I want to ask you something. In your home, which type of oil runs out the fastest each month? Olive oil, vegetable oil, canola oil, soybean oil, or something else? Leave a comment below, because sometimes all it takes is looking at the bottle of oil in the kitchen to understand how a family really cooks. And if cooking oil is what helps ingredients enter the pan, the next item is what adds more nutrition to a meal with almost no extra effort. 7. Frozen vegetables. Americans waste tens of billions of pounds of food every year, and fresh fruits and vegetables are always among the most discarded groups. The irony is that many families buy vegetables with the goal of eating healthier, but end up throwing part of them in the trash. A bag of salad bought at the beginning of the week. A bunch of broccoli meant to be cooked tomorrow. Then work gets busier, the weather gets hotter, the weekend arrives faster, and the vegetables begin to wilt. In many cases, frozen vegetables can retain a similar amount of vitamins, and sometimes even more than some fresh vegetables that have spent many days in transportation and sitting on the shelf. We often think fresh is always better, but with many vegetables, harvest timing and storage are what matter. Summer is when the value of frozen vegetables becomes clearest. This is the season when many families accidentally eat fewer vegetables, not because they do not want to eat vegetables, but because they do not want to wash, cut, and prepare them on hot days. When temperatures rise, quick meals start replacing balanced meals. A bag of frozen broccoli looks very ordinary, but behind it is an entire cold chain. Processing, freezing, cold storage, refrigerated trucks, distribution centers, and supermarket freezers. When electricity costs, fuel, labor, or summer power demand rises, this entire system comes under pressure. Unlike rice, pasta, or canned goods, frozen vegetables cannot cut back on the cold chain and still maintain the same quality. That is why many people are starting to see familiar bags of vegetables cost more than before, go on sale less often, and some mixed vegetables no longer feel as cheap as they did a few years ago. But the bigger story is health. Frozen vegetables are often what keep a convenient meal from becoming a meal lacking nutrition. For people over 50, this is one of the most practical purchases in the supermarket. No washing, no cutting, no worrying about spoilage after a few days. Just take out the amount you need and put the rest back in the freezer. If your family often uses broccoli, peas, spinach, or mixed vegetables, this is a good time to buy a little extra while prices are still reasonable. And I want to ask you, if you could keep only one frozen vegetable in your freezer this summer, which one would you choose? 6. Peanut butter. Summer has a very uncomfortable kind of hunger. Not hunger so strong that you need to cook a big meal, but also not something you can ignore, especially when children are home more. Adults are tired from the heat, and people over 50 sometimes just need something soft, quick, and energy-rich enough to keep from feeling drained in the middle of the day. And in moments like that, peanut butter becomes a small but very practical item. A slice of bread spread with peanut butter, a banana cut in half with a little peanut butter added, a small spoonful eaten with oats or crackers. No need to turn on the stove, no need to wash a pot, no need for long preparation. The important thing is that it is not just convenient. It helps fill the gap between meals, especially on days when the daily routine is disrupted by summer break. For children, it is familiar, easy to eat, and quickly filling. For older adults, it can be a soft source of energy, much easier to use than many foods that require a lot of chewing or long cooking. When the weather is hot, appetite often decreases. A big dinner can sound very heavy. But a small piece of bread with peanut butter is simple enough for the body to accept. The value of peanut butter is that it saves you from expensive decisions. When there is nothing quick to eat at home, it is very easy to order takeout, buy sweets, or stop by a convenience store. But if you have a jar of peanut butter ready, you always have a cheaper, more filling, and more stable option. So before summer arrives, if the brand your family usually uses is selling at a good price, buying an extra jar or two makes sense. No need to overstock. Just enough so that hot, busy, tiring days, or children constantly asking, "Is there anything to eat?" do not turn into a bigger bill. And now I want to ask you, in your home, is peanut butter usually used with bread, bananas, oats, or in some other way? Share it in the comments below. 5. Pasta. Summer has a kind of cost that is very hard to see in advance. Suddenly, there are more people eating at home. Children are out of school. Grandchildren stop by. Relatives visit on the weekend. A lunch that seemed meant for only 2 people suddenly becomes a meal for 4. And if the pantry does not have a base item that is fast enough, cheap enough, and easy enough to portion out. That meal can easily turn into delivery pizza, fast food, or a supermarket trip that costs more than expected. That is when pasta proves its value. A box of spaghetti, penne, or macaroni is not just a cheap food. It is a way to control unexpected meals. Just add tomato sauce, frozen vegetables, canned fish, leftover chicken, or a little cheese, and you can turn a few scattered ingredients into a meal enough for the whole family. Pasta has the ability to stretch a meal without making the people sitting at the table feel like they are eating something thrown together. A little ground meat may be too little if eaten on its own, but mixed into a pot of pasta, it becomes dinner. A handful of frozen vegetables may not be enough to become a main dish, but with pasta and sauce, it becomes part of a complete meal. In summer, this is especially important. When daily routines change, you do not just need cheap food. You need food that helps you avoid expensive last-minute decisions. Because many grocery bills do not rise because of one big purchase. They rise because those "let's just order something quick" meals happen too many times. Pasta is not perfect, but it is very practical. It stores well, cooks easily, portions out easily, and combines easily with whatever is left in the refrigerator. If the type of pasta your family usually uses is selling at a good price, buying a few extra boxes before summer is a calm and smart decision. And I want to know, in your home, what type of pasta is always in the pantry? Spaghetti, penne, macaroni, or something else? Share it in the comments below. Because the next item is what helps turn a simple meal into a complete protein source. 4. Canned fish. There are foods you buy for today, and there are foods you buy because you do not know what next week will look like. Canned fish belongs to the second group. A can of tuna can sit in the pantry for months without anyone touching it. A can of salmon can be pushed to the back of the shelf. A can of sardines can be forgotten until the end of summer. But what is interesting is that the most useful foods are often not the ones used the most. They are the ones that are always ready when you need them. That is why canned fish holds a special place in millions of kitchens. Not because it is the cheapest, not because it is the most delicious, but because it removes almost all the waiting. No need to thaw. No need for complicated preparation. No need to think about what to eat tonight. Just open the can and you have a complete source of protein. Summer makes that value even clearer. Days too hot to stand in the kitchen for long. Evenings when you come home late. Weekend trips. Storms that cause power outages. Or simply days when you do not want to spend more time cooking. In all of those situations, a can of fish can turn bread, salad, rice, or pasta into a real meal. But what few people see is that the seafood industry operates by rules completely different from most other food industries. When meat supply runs into problems, livestock producers can expand herds. When demand for a crop rises, farmers can increase planted acreage in the next season. The ocean does not work that way. Fish grow at the speed of nature, not at the speed of the market. That is why disruptions in the seafood industry often last much longer than people expect. Fuel costs rise. Fishing regulations change. Global demand increases. And eventually, consumers begin to notice that familiar cans of fish become more expensive, smaller, or less frequently discounted. But the greatest value of canned fish is not its price. It is its ability to wait. You do not need to use it today to see its value. You simply need to know that when you need a quick, reliable, and long-lasting source of protein, it is still there. A can of fish is not the most exciting food in the house, but it is often one of the most patient foods. And now I want to ask you a question. If you could keep only one type in your pantry, would you choose tuna, salmon, or sardines? Share your answer in the comments below. 3. Canned tomatoes. If California has a more difficult growing season than usual tomorrow, most people will not notice it right away. They will still see pizza on the dinner table. They will still see pasta in restaurants. They will still see chili in the pot. They will still see tomato sauce on supermarket shelves. But a few months later, they may begin to notice familiar items becoming more expensive, smaller, or less available than before. That is because nearly the entire U.S. processed tomato industry depends on a single region, California's Central Valley. What is interesting is that most people do not think they depend on that system. No one wakes up in the morning and tells themselves they need canned tomatoes today. But then they use pasta sauce. They make soup, they cook chili, they eat pizza, they use salsa, and suddenly, tomatoes are everywhere. For many years, this system worked very efficiently. But new pressures have started to appear. Longer periods of extreme heat, higher irrigation water costs, rising labor costs. Energy and transportation costs are rising as well. And every pressure is concentrated in the same region that has to supply most of the processed tomatoes for the entire country. What makes this story special is that there is no quick solution. You cannot move dozens of processing plants to another state in 1 year. You cannot rebuild the entire infrastructure in just a few months. That system took decades to form. So when capacity becomes limited, the market usually reacts in a familiar way. Companies prioritize products that bring higher profits. Promotions appear less often. Some products change size. Some items begin to rise in price. But this is not really a story about tomatoes. This is a story about the things that keep simple ingredients becoming meals people still want to eat. A can of tomatoes can connect pasta, beans, rice, vegetables, and meat into a complete dish. It brings flavor. It brings familiarity. It turns ordinary ingredients into a real dinner. That is why I always see canned tomatoes as one of the most underrated foods in the kitchen. Not because it is expensive, not because it is rare, but because when it disappears, many familiar dishes begin to lose part of their identity. And if tomatoes are the glue of dozens of different meals, the next item is the foundation that has fed billions of people around the world for generations. 2. Rice. There is something interesting about rice. While many other foods constantly change their role with trends, rice has remained almost unchanged for generations. More than half of the world's population still relies on it as a daily staple food. Not every week, not occasionally, but every day. That is why disruptions in the rice market are often bigger than what consumers see. In the last few years, many major rice exporting countries have adopted export restrictions or prioritized domestic supply. When that happens, the impact does not stop with one country. Billions of people are competing for one of the world's most basic foods. But what puts rice at number 2 is not the market. It is the stability it provides. Look back at today's list. Eggs provide protein. Frozen vegetables add nutrition. Canned fish brings convenience. Tomatoes create flavor. But there is one thing that can connect all of those foods together. That is rice. A bowl of rice can go with beans, fish, vegetables, eggs, or almost anything left in the kitchen. It does not try to be the most outstanding item on the table. It simply does its job well. And during periods when food costs rise, that adaptability becomes extremely valuable. For many families, a large bag of rice is not a symbol of stockpiling. It is a symbol of having more options, more meals, more flexibility. Some foods help you eat better. 1. Global coffee prices have at times nearly doubled compared with a few years ago. But what puts coffee at the top of this list is not the price. If this were only a story about the commodities market, it would not be in the number one position. What makes coffee different is what it represents. Some people can skip dessert, some people can skip a snack, but many people do not want to skip their morning cup of coffee. Not because of caffeine, but because of the feeling that comes with it. A familiar chair, a familiar corner of the kitchen, a few quiet minutes before the day begins. After 50, small things like that often become far more important than we once thought. Behind a cup of coffee is a global system stretching from Brazil to Vietnam, from coffee farms to roasters and local supermarkets. When extreme weather, drought, or failed harvests appear, supply can be affected for years, not just a few months. That is why coffee prices have been under major pressure. But honestly, that is still not the most important part of the story. What matters is that coffee brings a sense of normalcy. And in times when everything becomes more expensive or harder to predict, a sense of normalcy can sometimes be more valuable than we realize. That is why buying a little coffee ahead of time, while the price is still reasonable, is not stockpiling. It is simply preparing for something you know you will continue to use. Because sometimes the smartest financial decision is not finding something new to buy. It is buying a little ahead of time the things that have already been part of your life for a very long time. And now I want to ask you one final question. If you could keep only one habit in your kitchen, would your morning cup of coffee be on that list? Share it in the comments below. I would really like to know your answer. If you look back at today's entire list, you will see that this is not a story about fear. It is a story about being proactive. A well-prepared kitchen does not need to be large, expensive, or perfect. It simply needs to have the things that help your family stay calmer when summer becomes hotter, busier, and more expensive. Buying a little ahead of time, the foods you already use is not extreme stockpiling. It is a way of taking care of yourself and the people in your home before the pressure arrives. Now I would like to hear from you. Out of the 10 items we talked about today, which one makes you want to check your kitchen right now? Share it in the comments below. Your experience might help another family prepare a little better for this summer.